Alright, Thrill Seekers, that was Whip It by Devo from Akron, Ohio. And that is the other bass that I've had in storage for quite a while. That one I did try to sell, but I couldn't find a buyer for it. I bought it so that I could travel with it, and I didn't end up traveling with it much, and it's a weird bass to play. It's difficult, and it hurts my fingers. But, oh, and also this shirt. This was designed by Mick Hooray, our drummer in Zero Defects, and it's kind of a parody of the Devo. Devo has shirts like this that go D-E-V-O instead of O-D-F-X, so Zero Defects. Anyway, that's the joke. So yesterday's video got a lot of comments about whether self-immolation is a Buddhist practice or not, and maybe I'll do a video addressing that, but I didn't really intend to do a week of videos on self-immolation, so I'd rather just go back to the ones I wanted to do, which is answering some questions that I've gotten from readers recently. And here's one that I liked that happened to... Well, I'll tell you what happened, but I'll read you the question first. And it goes like this. I know you've probably been asked this a million times, but here goes anyway. I've been meditating daily for a year and a half, but sitting weekly for the past 6 months with a Zen group, Kwanum, that's a Korean school of Zen. For the past month, I've been sitting only shikantaza, which is the practice that I always talk about. And if you know this channel, you've heard a lot about it before, and you're going to hear some more about it today. Just sitting with no goal in mind, nothing to aim for, nothing to achieve. So for the past months I've been sitting only shikantaza, but I sometimes find myself following the breath or the rise and fall of my stomach. Secondly, I brought shikantaza up to my Zen teacher, and she told me it was a more advanced practice. So my question is it okay to sit zazen and follow the breath or movement, and why would some consider shikantaza to be advanced? So this is something that comes up a lot with people who do shikantaza, that there are some schools of Buddhism, some schools of Zen Buddhism, in which shikantaza is considered an advanced practice. And I've been reading this book lately. This is 2U Zen Sayings of Kodo Sawaki. Kodo Sawaki was Nishijima Roshi's, my second Zen teacher's first teacher, if that makes sense. And this book just came out from Home Press, and I did a blurb on the back, and so they sent me a copy. And I'm reading it, rereading it, because I read it before, and it just so happens that the chapter I happen to be reading really deals with this matter from Kodo Sawaki's viewpoint. So I'm going to read you Kodo Sawaki's statements on this matter from chapter 13, which is titled To You, who says that you have attained a better state of mind through Zazen. Because I think what this comes down to is this idea of advanced practices and practices that aren't advanced brings up the idea of advancing in Zen practice. So let's read you what Kodo Sawaki has to say. As long as you say Zazen is a good thing, something isn't quite right. Unstained Zazen is absolutely nothing special. It isn't even necessary to be grateful for it. Wouldn't it be strange if a baby said to its mother, "Please have understanding for the fact that I am always pooping in my diapers"? Without knowledge, without consciousness, everything is as it should be. Don't stain your Zazen by saying that you've progressed, feel better, or have become more confident through Zazen. So don't say those things, he says. Okay, and the next quote is, we only say things are going well when they are going our way, when things are the way you want them to be. Okay, that's one. And then next statement. We should simply leave the water of our original nature as it is, but instead we are constantly mucking about with our hands to find out how cold or warm it is. That's why it gets cloudy. Okay, next one. There are bodhisattvas without magical abilities, that's in quotes. These are bodhisattvas who have even entirely forgotten words like practice or satori, satori meaning enlightenment. Bodhisattvas without wonderful powers, bodhisattvas who are immeasurable, bodhisattvas who are not interested in their name and fame. Okay, next one. Zazen isn't like a thermometer where the temperature slowly rises. Just a little more. Yeah, that's it. Now I've got satori. Zazen never becomes anything special, no matter how long you practice. If it becomes something special, you must have a screw loose somewhere. And here's one that directly relates to shikantaza. There are some who can even delude themselves with their zazen. They reckon that the temperature on their Zen thermometer is already quite high, but this has nothing to do with zazen. Simply doing it, which is their translation of shikan, as in shikantaza, simply doing it is zazen. The same is also true for nembutsu, and nembutsu is the practice of chanting the name of Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha. Namu Amida Butsu is how you say it. And I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that Kodo Sawaki was somebody who practiced it. It's the practice of the Jodo Shinshu school of Buddhism. So he says the same is true also for Nembutsu. You shouldn't practice Nembutsu in order to go to paradise someday, which is what some people do. They think that if they keep chanting Nembutsu, they'll go to the Western heaven and be reborn there and then get enlightened in Western heaven. You should simply do it. This means simply doing what Buddha does. We can't save up on zazen. And this is in quotes. I was so very honest when I was still young that I've decided now that I'm old I can steal things from others from time to time. We can't save up on honesty either. So that's what he says. If we don't watch out, this is the next statement, if we don't watch out, we'll start believing that the Buddha Dharma is like climbing up a staircase. But it isn't like this at all. This very step right now is the one practice which includes all practices, and is all practices contained in this one practice. That's what shikantaza is. Next statement. You say you're finished with practice. From a religious point of view, there's nothing more absurd. And finally he says, the true satori of the Buddha Dharma has got to fill all time, all space, heaven and earth. One or two little satoris that we pick like apples or pears aren't worth a fart. That's what he says. So he was a salty fellow. So the question is about whether shikantaza is an advanced practice, and I think these quotes go to answering that question. There is this school of thought within the Rinzai, certain teachers of Rinzai style zazen, and certainly in the Sambo Kyodan style, which is supposed to be a mixture of Rinzai and Soto zazen, that shikantaza is an advanced practice, that you should start out with other practice, such as concentrating on a koan, or counting your breath, or watching the rise and fall of your abdomen, and so forth. Those are beginner's practices, and once you've done that for a while, you can go on to shikantaza. I can kind of understand that because shikantaza is really difficult, especially for beginners. And my first teacher actually started us off on breath counting, where you're supposed to count each exhalation silently to yourself, 1 to 10, and then start over again. And for the beginner, that's easier. Now, Dogen was different, and if you're going to be a pure Dogenite, I don't know if that's a real phrase, a real word, but to purely follow what Dogen said, you just start off with shikantaza, and you finish off with shikantaza, and it never changes. I must be living on a flight path for police helicopters, because I've stopped this video 3 times already for the police helicopters, but let's keep going on. So shikantaza can feel very difficult. It's like teaching a person to swim by throwing them in the deep end. It's like, here you go, swim. But the philosophy behind doing it that way is that there is no such thing as advancement. Advancement is a process in the brain of comparing what's going on in this moment to a memory of what happened in the past, or memories of what happened in the past, and anticipation of what might happen in the future. That's what advancement really means. It says that someday I'm going to be like this, and yesterday I was like that. Shikantaza is about focusing on this moment and allowing this moment to be exactly what it is. Ziggy, are you allowing this moment to be exactly what it is? I think that's what you always do. Can you see him? Anyway, so let's keep going. So allowing this moment to be exactly what it is means there's no such thing as advancement. Advancement is a kind of fantasy. So we just forget about advancement and stay with whatever this moment is, whatever it happens to be, whether it feels great or feels lousy. We're just trying to let it be exactly as it is. As Kodo Sawaki says, this very step right now is the one practice which includes all practices, and it is all practices contained in this one practice. That's what just sitting is intended to be. It's difficult, though, and I get it. I get how difficult it is. And the difficulty of it is really part of the practice. It's not supposed to be easy. So yeah, it can feel better, or it can feel more like you're doing meditation if you count your breath, or if you watch your rising and falling abdomen, or if you concentrate on a koan, or if you have a special experience like Satori, you can feel like, oh yeah, I finally got it. But those are all a trap. I've talked about my own experiences around this, and I can tell you just from my experience what a trap it is. You can have these awakening experiences, and they are real, and they do happen, and they are important, but they are also a trap. Before you have them, you're anticipating it and moving for it, and maybe it's a motivator. I don't know. There is some merit to talking about it as a kind of motivational thing that keeps you going. Limited merit, but the problem is once you have it, the general response that almost everybody gets into, that I certainly got into, is trying to hold it and trying to grab it, or trying to make it happen again, or feeling like, oh, this moment isn't as good as that moment of satori or enlightenment. You want that back. And that is something that most of us spend the rest of our lives trying to unravel, and that I am spending the rest of my life trying to unravel. And in some ways, it often feels to me like maybe I'd been better off without having, a moment of great awakening. It might have been easier to deal with the rest of life without comparing it always to that, because it's always going to be there. It was such a big deal that it's always going to be stuck in my head as something to regret not having at the moment, and something to aspire to have again, and something to measure myself by. So putting that away can be really, really difficult. And what we're trying to do with shikantaza practice, we're just sitting for the sake of just sitting. And that seems to a lot of people like, well, I can just sit any old time I want to. But you don't normally, in our normal lives, we don't get into the reality of sitting, of doing one thing purely. So there you go. I don't think shikantaza is an advanced practice, but of course I would say that because I come from the school of Zen, which says shikantaza is the only practice and there is no such thing as advancement. So there you go. I hope that helps. And maybe Whip It is somehow related. The song Whip It is somehow, I didn't think it was related to this video, but we're whipping it. Whip it good. Anyway, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. And remember, if you want to donate to me, you can go to the URL you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. Remember, I have a new book, which is available all over the place. Probably will start showing up in stores within the next couple of weeks, depending on where you live. But you can already order it from most of the online places, and I really appreciate that, because I want this to be a million seller so that I don't have to worry about money anymore. But I doubt that it will, and your contributions will continue to be important. So thank you very much. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't got to donate if you don't want to donate. All right, I already said see you next time. Have a good time all the time, but I'm going to say it again. And bye. Hey, Ziggy, thank you for making the cameo in the video. That was cool. You ready to go back inside? He was sitting by my feet the whole time I was making the video after he made his cameo. I think that means he wants to go inside. All right. Hey, Zig, say bye to everybody.